Hey guys, it's Frankie here, and I want to show you guys, for those of you guys who have restoration companies, how to go from that dreaded conversation of like, "What do you want us to do now, boss?" When you don't have work from them, and then you're still making the payroll, making the payments, which I can relate to, by the way, as a boss. You know, we've had the same challenges at different points in our growth over the last 16 years, and making sure that your crews always have work, that there's always new jobs coming in, that you're always getting those phone calls, and that you always have new stuff for them to work, so they're income producing employees rather than costing you money. And I'm going to show you what this heat map means, because this is the answer to the age old question of how do you keep the crews busy and what it translates to in the real world. And I'll explain in a second, but is a phone call where we hear from our clients over and over, is where people say, "Hey, I found you on the Google." And this is an example of a client we've had for about 2 months. They're in a major city in Texas. And part of the Google search results is it changes based on where you do the search. So these are like basically just 1 mile apart, and they have a whole bunch of number one rankings. And of course, we're only 2 months in, so like we're going to keep moving that. But it translates well to getting that phone call where, "Hey, we found you on the Google," and somebody being basically pre-sold on using you because they found you. You didn't kind of sell them. So I want to tell you, just before I show you how it works, is who it works well for. If you got a crew, guys, at least somebody who works for you that you need to keep busy, you need to keep feeding them work. Um, you have to have a process for capturing and generating reviews, or be willing to build one, because Google just does not work without reviews. We can help you with that, and we have some software and tools we can recommend. But at the end of the day, Google just does not work if you're not in the review getting game. And then you have 4 to 8 months of runway, typically, depending on where you're at and how competitive the area is. So depends on how far you are behind number one, as well as how competitive your area is. But for most people, we can get you in those kind of top three spots in 4 to 8 months. And what will happen is it's like the old air conditioning in my car. I used to have my very first car. I remember, I don't know, 20 years ago. The air conditioning only worked full blast. I called it the zero or hero. Google is a lot like that. When you're in the number 5 spot, nobody calls you. When you're in 10, 15, nobody calls you. But when you're 1, 2, and 3, your phone rings all day long from people going, "I found you on Google. I found you on Google. I found you on Google." So it usually takes about 4 to 8 months to actually kind of hit that pay dirt, depending on where you're at. And we can run a very specific analysis. And of course, you have to have a good quality website that actually deserves to be number one. This is a thing nobody really talks about, but like if your website is just kind of boring, or lacks information, or doesn't have, like doesn't sell your services well, and you're not kind of like updating and adding to it, it's hard to get you number one if you don't really deserve to be number one. So let me tell you quickly how it works, if you're still with me here. Is It's really just boring fundamentals: doing the on page, heat map and keywords, getting reviews, getting in the PR and the news. That's probably a little bit of our secret sauce. And also another part of our secret sauce is the content machine. I want to break each of those down, so I'll show you what they are, how they work, and how we do these things behind the scene. So part of doing the on page stuff is actually optimizing it so, like, A, people find you, and B, it actually sells them on the idea of working with you. So this is not a real company, but I actually just modified this because it was based on a real company, somebody who asked me to look at their stuff today, and their search result was set up for their company name. So I put ABC Restoration here, and basically this is their actual description, but I just kind of modified it. And this is the kind of stuff we change it to, because if somebody's searching in Google and they have no idea who you are, or anyone is for that matter, this is their first exposure to you, right? Like, even before they hit your website, is all they see is your name and this little thing right here. And for a lot of companies, this is just an afterthought to fill in. But like, there's lots of little things like we want to do to optimize that, to make you the number one top rated company, over 500 plus Google reviews, 24/7 service available in 45 minutes less, certified and insured, things like that, so that it actually sells people twofold. One, on Google itself, because it actually has excuse me, the keyword in the title, but also because it makes people like actually want to inquire more about your services. So this is a twofold thing, is we have to balance the search engines and the people, but there's lots of little updates that we have to make to the site, to little changes like these. But I thought this was the most obvious one that we probably do the most. Is almost always people hand us a title and it's just basically their name. And if somebody doesn't know who you are in Google, like, there's no point in your name. You can have your name after the fact. Sometimes we'll put like a little line and then say ABC Restoration, but it shouldn't be all about you. It should be why they should click on your site, why they should come work with you. And it should be optimized for what people are actually searching for. This is another little lost art And by the way, this is a little trick that I'm sure you guys have had at more than one point, like kind of bad experiences with marketers. And so one of my goals being to change that. But one of the things that I've seen marketers do with SEO ranking is they'll show a keyword that nobody's actually searching for. And one of the first things we do is figure out all the ways in which people are trying to find you, which is a combination of search terms plus your geography, right? So like, there's going to be different searches in Atlanta versus Dallas versus frog balls, Nebraska, and those kind of things. But they fall into certain buckets, like, and also sometimes little variations by even a single letter will produce different search results. So water damage restoration, restoration near me, uh, restoration company, restoration companies, restoration companies near me, water damage repair company. Even though they're all the same basic thing, like the person searching that is trying to find you and trying to find the same basic service. There's lots of different variations: basement water damage, storm damage, and things like that. So this is what we do to help you get found in the Google. And as I mentioned, the heat map is this is a real life example, by the way. Company gave us this. They started in water damage restoration. There was a lot of like kind of bottom of first page rankings and a lot of not found. And then now today, this is only 2 months later, but there's a whole bunch of like number one rankings and things like that. And of course, we're still just getting started. So we're going to convert a lot of those 4, 5s, and 6s, top 3. When this is all said and done, this will look a lot more green. But that's what we're basically doing is creating these heat grids, finding the keywords that people are trying to find you already, getting in front of where they're looking for you, and then making like well-crafted sales pitches on each of those keywords, and making sure you're the number one company that's found. So it's half about getting found, and then half about like actually like really selling people on what you do. And then of course, Google doesn't work without reviews, as I mentioned. These partnerships only work well together when you have a review getting process. So um, and I recommend like there's a couple of software and tools. House Call Pro comes to mind, but have some way of like every time you do a job, like ask people, can you leave us a review, and get them like get in the habit of having people take out their phone and do it. Otherwise, it's hard to win the Google game if you don't have reviews. So I tell you that because sometimes people come to us, they don't have a review process in place and they don't want to bother with it, but we really can't do anything to help you if you're looking for specifically to get internet leads and people like call you up and basically be pre-sold from the Google machine. It doesn't work unless you have this review process in place. We also, this is a little bit of a secret sauce, but one of the things Google loves is when you're in the news, because news sites tend to be reputable and stuff. So over the last 16 years of doing this, I know probably 10,000 times, we've built our own press release network. So we have about 150 sites that we use where they allow us to publish stuff. And this allows us to be able to get you featured in news and things like that. And we have a whole content team that writes it. And by distributing news pieces on you, Google sees you as more legitimate than your competitors, who are more than likely not going to have this kind of news and PR. And they're just a mixture of a lot of like Fox, ABC, CBS kind of local affiliates. Sorry, I got to fly. Trying to flying in front of me as we're recording this, and those kind of things. And then as well, like radio stations and things like that, but they're real legitimate media. So for that reason, Google tends to look favorably. And then the last piece is I think SEOs tend to make Google sound more complex than it is. And I look at it, it's a big question and answer machine. Like people go there because they have a question. Which restoration company should I use? And I showed you all those different keywords. There's hundreds and hundreds of variations. So one of the things we do is simply create the most and best content. And this has a twofold effect. Is it gives you the most answers, so it's the number one way people can find you, but it's also a credibility factor. Like if you click on two websites and one person has basically just like a glorified business card website, and another person has 150 articles published on restoration, even if you never intend to read any of those, which one of those two companies are you going to think are the real experts? So one of the things that we do is we publish regular content on your behalf, both on your website and your Google My Business listing. And this creates an effect where like you're the expert, you have the most and best content. And then therefore by having the most and best answers, you legitimately deserve those number one rankings, right? So it's a lot of building those kind of assets out. Let me tell you just quickly about the typical results. Usually what we'll see is 50 to 100 extra phone calls a month. Obviously, like, a bigger city with more competition will take longer, but there's more kind of business to be had. And then smaller areas, it kind of depends a little bit on your geography, how much competition. But Typical range is 50 to 100. Like I said, it usually takes 4 to 8 months. Like I said, Google's a lot like the air conditioning in my old car, zero or hero. When you're in those top three spots, people call you all day long. When you're even number five, even though you're very close to the finish line, nobody calls the number five person. So we found that once you get those top spots, you get phone calls, you see business from it, but you have to have a little bit of patience. Though I will say one thing that we will show you is progress immediately. Like if you think about it like a marathon where you got to run 26 miles, you're not going to finish the race in 5 minutes, but in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I can show you like, hey, we're further along than the starting place. And so we'll show you that progress. You'll see the progress right away. But what you won't see is the immediate. But if you just trust me that think about how you use Google, like you never call anybody past the top 3, 4 spots. That's how pretty much everybody uses it. So once you get those things, you get, regular phone calls, but anything behind that, you don't really see anything at all. Our typical cost for that is about 1,800 bones a month. And that includes all the things I mentioned, the news, the PR, the content. We really have a whole team dedicated to moving that for you. And then communication, I should mention, let me just move my face here out of the way, is in the first 60 days, we like to report to you weekly, let you know what's going on every single week. Just so, because I feel like, a lot of people have been burned in this SEO game. And so I don't want you to think like you just hired some company that has now disappeared, is not doing what they said they would do. So we let you know what we're working on, why we're working on it, how it's going. They're short little, just like 2-3 minute video updates, no bullshit. Like, here's what we're working on. Here's why we're doing it. Here's how it's coming along. Here's what we're tracking. And then once we get to a point where we've actually seen the progress, the phone has started ringing. At that point, we switch to monthly reporting, and you'll get a regular update. But just let you know, we send you proactive video updates. Also, we don't typically do a lot of unscheduled phone calls. We're happy to talk to you, but I found over the years, as the client roster grows, if there's too many unscheduled phone calls, we end up spending all the time on the phone explaining what we're doing and not enough time actually delivering it. And then the work suffers. So we're happy to answer all your questions, help you. We tend to usually do those over text messages, although we're not against phone calls as long as they're kind of scheduled in advance. But if you're a call me kind of person, nothing against that, but we may not be a good fit. But if you're happy, just again, we like to do this proactively. I'm going to update you even before you ask, or somebody from our team, I should say, will update you before we ask. And then what we need from you is just basics. We need some access to your stuff, your site, your hosting, your Google My Business. Basically get us the stuff we need so that we can actually start building out those assets, optimizing, driving business to you. Again, I've mentioned I've been doing this 16 years, probably have done this 10,000 times. In fact, for much of the last few years, we've been doing what's called a white label agency, which is basically when a subcontractor. So a contractor gets hired and then they hire a subcontractor, but it's the subcontractor who actually knows how to do the work. We've actually been the subcontractor for a lot of different companies. So there's a lot of SEO rankings and things like that are built that are not in our name, that are actually our work. If you're interested in finding out more and having a conversation about it, I hope I've laid for you the major answers to your questions in terms of what you can expect, how long, the cost, those kind of things. We got a little form at the bottom of our website at getfloodjobs.com. And if you're interested, just fill that out, and either myself or somebody from the team will reach out, and we'll see if we're a good fit, and hopefully be able to work together. But if not, we will point you in the best direction for what may help you now, because there are some other good stuff in this industry for getting referrals from plumbers and insurance adjusters and things like that, and people who help you get paid on the work you've already done if you're behind on that. So not always is the solution us, but we like to leave you better off no matter what. So give us a holler, and we'll talk soon.